Hey everyone, welcome to the February 26th edition of the Intuit Developer Friday morning Hangout. Waiting for people to show up and ask some questions. Today's just open office hours, so jump in if you want. You can always, you don't feel like joining, you can actually, if you're just watching, just use the Q&A panel, and I'll be monitoring that and answering questions along the way. For now, I'll probably just go on mute until somebody shows up. Thank you.
Greetings. Can't hear you.
Jack, how's it going today?
Pretty good. It's Friday.
Yeah. I hear you.
Welcome back. Greetings.
Yeah, I'm back and refreshed, ready to go.
Can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I'm getting echoes. It's 5 seconds later.
Yeah, I hear you.
Welcome back. Greetings.
Yeah, I'm back and refreshed. Turn your volume down a little bit, Jack. It's coming back through. I think that's why. And I'll set my video quality down 1 notch. Is that better?
I was muted and I was still talking.
All right. Is it still delayed?
Well, seems okay now.
Okay. I just turned it off HD video. Seems better. All right.
I was muted.
I got a new background.
It started again.
All right. Is it still? Let me make sure nothing else started running on my computer here on my end.
I've been hardware muting myself.
Let's see. Does that help?
I've been hardware muting myself.
So Jack, I'm hearing you back through your own connection, like twice, like through your speakers or something.
Hold on.
Are you in the? Did you actually? Like it's running in the background a second time?
One of the problems I think is that it's so hard to find the meeting. I start up multiple tabs in the different Hangout places where it might be, and I think I had 2 of them running at the same time.
All right. Is that better now?
Wait 15 seconds.
Okay.
Well, I guess that was it. Multiple tabs.
Okay. Perfect. It's all back on track.
It's too bad it's so hard to get this meeting joined.
You know, it's Google Plus to some extent. It's the Google Hangouts. Once you're in them, they're great. I love the tech, and I love that it goes to YouTube automatically over afterwards. But I can schedule them. But Google does not have a view where you can just click on Google Plus for Intuit Developer and just see all of them. So there's a lot of manual process of going from here, putting them in that shared spreadsheet, and then once you start the Hangout, getting the join link. But I did see that Facebook is now supporting some live video type broadcast scenarios. So I might think about, I mean, if I get the same experience to some extent, if we could do screen sharing and other things, I might actually consider, instead of using the Hangouts, possibly using the new Facebook platform, because I think on Facebook, the events are just easier to find.
Yeah.
Just list them like in a logical order. Like right now, Google tries to surface Hangouts in the order they think is the most important. And sometimes it'll surface a Hangout from 2 years ago, and it just doesn't. All I want is a list of here's the Hangouts in chronological order, so somebody like you can just find them.
Yeah.
Or having it's a Google Plus thing.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about something.
Yeah.
QBO reviews. Now I'm more interested in them.
Okay.
What is the criteria for them accepting a review?
So, and maybe it's the other way around. It's not so much the criteria for accepting, I think there's things that will cause reviews to get rejected. Obviously, you can't pay somebody to write a review, right? You can't, like, there's definite no-nos there. But if a bunch of reviews came in from like the same IP address, those will get flagged as fraudulent. So it's really not so much, what they'll allow for reviews. It's really what's going to flag the review as possibly being fraudulent, right? So
Yeah.
anything that's paid for, anything where I think if all the reviewers had the domain of aatex.com, that might trigger something, right? So I think it's really a matter of just having honest to goodness reviews, and it's probably not going to be a problem.
Well, given that there are multiple QuickBooks companies that we're using now, okay, but it's possible that one person or one small group of people might be doing all the QuickBooks work, CPA firms and so forth. So if a CPA firm has 100 separate companies, like the one I was having problems with, each of those companies theoretically should be able to give a review, but one person is doing the work or a group of people is doing the work. I know it's on a borderline.
Yeah, I mean, the only risk you run with that, Jack, is that the people that aren't actually using your software, they're going to leave possibly a review that doesn't help anybody, and people are going to be like, they'll see through those reviews, right? And because they just write a review of, I think my accountant uses this, it's awesome. They're not, they get that, people will get that fine line of skepticism will fly into those reviews, and people, if you give too many reviews like that, people will kind of think you're gaming the system. So I think it's the people that actually use your software are the best ones to write reviews.
So we got to get rid of all these accounting firms.
Well, have the accounting firms write reviews.
They write one.
I'm sorry?
But according to the criteria for rejection, they can only write one.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. They write one review of your app.
Yeah.
Right?
But supposing that accounting firm has 10 people and they all have a different set of accounts, but they're all coming from the same IP address.
Yeah, let's say there's an accounting firm with 10 accounting employees, and 2 employees at that accounting firm want to write a review of your product. Maybe one person thinks your product is 5 stars and the other person thinks it's a 3-star app. Absolutely, they both can write reviews. They just probably want to do it from home. Because it'll get flagged as fraud if it's on the same IP address.
Yeah, that's the type of stuff I can't tell customers really to do.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is kind of an unwritten, like, it's there for a lot of review systems, not just ours. It's kind of a best practice. That's how they keep, some automated robot from posting 5,000 reviews to a website.
Well, I understand the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
But I also know that people are getting paid to supplement it to write good reviews. I know what's going on.
So we don't allow that, and anytime we find out that those reviews have been removed.
How do you know?
How do we know? Sometimes developers have emailed customers, and those emails will come back to me.
Yeah,
right? Or we'll see it. Or they'll send email. I mean, to some extent, most of the apps, I'm subscribed to their email list because I've signed up for the app myself. So it's kind of monitored indirectly. Now, in theory, could somebody completely do it under the covers? Yeah. But the reality is, the review system that we have really tries to keep everything above board. And to some extent, I would argue it's pretty successful thus far in doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch to the other thing, that crisis I had about a week ago when you were out. I still trying to figure out how do we get your support to handle problems that are outside of our program within, within Intuit, and your normal support lines won't handle it because it's a third-party app, and your support developing group won't handle it because they don't want to deal with customers. The one I'm having with that accounting firm, the same one.
Yeah, I think you show, like, for the accounting firm to understand that it's not you, right, is have them go and try to add a different app. Have them go add T-Sheets or Funbox or anything else, because that problem they were having, the OAuth problem, wasn't directly related to your app, right? It was just those fields weren't, it was stuck, right, because of something on that computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they could actually use, I mean, if they can't sign up for any app on apps.com, they can actually, on apps.com, there is a place to get help.
Is there a test app we can recommend? Something that you have up there? Because I don't want to go try somebody else's app that, if this was a test app, that Intuit had on there, I feel more comfortable than recommending, somebody else.
Well, we don't have one out there because all the test apps kind of attach to test sandboxes, etc. But they should be able to pick any of the apps that are out there. It shouldn't, like if they just randomly pick 3 and they can't connect to all 3, it's very clear it's not your app, right? And it's probably very clear it's probably not the platform, because thousands of customers are connecting to these apps. So it's something specific to that.
Let's just say that they did that to me, which I find totally unacceptable. Let's say they did that anyway, and it don't work. So we do know that it's probably related to the machine, but who looks at the problem and tries to identify and fix
it? It's just regular QuickBooks support. I mean, they can contact, at the top of apps.com, it asks if you need help, right? There's a little link. They click on that. That essentially takes them to the QuickBooks support site. And on that site, they can ask questions. And so they can say, I am unable to subscribe to any apps.com apps, like that. And then the support should be able to troubleshoot them.
Yeah, and the other thing is that now my app is a desktop app. Are there these problems unique to desktop apps versus web apps?
No, I think the only thing is, from a troubleshooting perspective, I think it's a different path. Like if it's a web app and we suspect, let's say you suspect that something's going wrong with the connection, because maybe it's a firewall or settings in the browser or something like that, right? Or a browser plugin. Maybe they have all cookies blocked. Who knows? If you go to a different browser or switch to private mode in a browser, a lot of times it'll work, and then you know what's going on. But if you're a desktop app, by default, you're probably using the embedded browser, which means it has to be IE, right? So the only way, you can't just say try a different browser to your customer, because it won't. You have to troubleshoot IE specifically.
So
I think that's the difference.
So by your definition, just trying any old other app, which might be a SaaS app, will not work.
So if they, let's say they have like a tool like Ghostery plugged on their machine, right? Which I know I run, and if I don't whitelist the Intuit sites, I can't sign up, right? Because it's blocking cookies and things like that, right? And trackers, etc. So if I have those blocked and I try to sign up for any app, yes, I can run into a problem. But if I go to my other browser that I don't have any tools set up on and it works, that tells me it's the browser.
I don't think we're on the same page here.
So Jack, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I'm going back to my like troubleshooting 101 days when IE6 came out, right? It's the same principle. If it doesn't work, reboot in safe mode, set IE to the default settings, see if it works. If it does work, that means they had some setting causing it to not work.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now,
I can even tell my customers that reset the default setting because half of them don't know. And you take some of these firms like the one we're just talking about, they have very strict security policies, and only their IT people can change it.
and
But
then that's where you have to tell the customer, your IT department's preventing you from using this. They need to allow you to get through.
oh yeah,
And that's, I mean, that's
well,
like I said, even back in the IE6 days, this problem's always existed, right? If people overly control a computer so it can't do things.
yeah. Well, again, well, I don't do it the same way you suggest. I'm saying, well, we can run it here. Our other online customers, they're running it fine. They don't have problems, so therefore, it's probably something on your machine,
Well,
right?
especially in that case, because if I remember that email chain correctly, the same firm, employee A, B, and C could run it, but employee D couldn't, right, on their computer.
No, that wasn't quite the case. Uh, but anyway, there might have been some, but I don't remember the story anymore. Once it got resolved, I tend to try to forget it. Once I know exactly what the problem was, I still don't know. I know it's an IE setting with SSL or something, but which one? I have no clue.
Oh yeah, and that's, I mean, they said even a decade ago with IE6, it was the same. In IE5, it was the same. In IE4, it was really the same problems. People would go in, monkey with preferences, and that would mess up the ability to download things for QuickBooks Desktop. For example, they couldn't get their payroll updates, or I mean, it's kind of it's the exact same root cause. Now it's just something else on the web or something else related. But it's people get those settings tweaked too far one direction, and it doesn't allow them to use the internet kind of in some expected way. And that's why they are settings and preferences.
Well, I completely understand what caused it. The problem is who fixes it and so forth. Again, customers always come to us, and they go to regular support. They don't really get help. They say it's a third party. They'll say talk to the vendor. And I come,
and that's true. Like they have to go through you guys first, right, to get support. But then you can instantly figure out, okay, sign up for this app. Does it work? No. Oh, it's the same problem. Look, it's not my app. Contact QuickBooks support and say I can't sign up for any app. It's not a specific app, and then QuickBooks support should assist with in that.
Mm-hmm. I'm still not convinced that signing up for a web app is going to be different or the same as my Windows app.
If it's an IE, I think it will. If they were to use Firefox, the experience won't be the same because you're using the embedded browser, correct?
I know, you don't have to tell me again. But,
oh, yeah.
But I understand that. But even if they use IE, I'm not convinced because I think that the whole OAuth is versus OpenID or something like that is going to be completely different.
Next time, I would really suspect that's not the case, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wish I could recreate that one.
I mean, I could probably let me open up IE fast. I'm just gonna do something fast here. Internet Explorer. Go to my options. Internet options. Security. Interesting. I'm just going in and changing some of my IE settings to like very high and blocking all cookies. All right, so let's say, okay, whoops, let me apply it first. All right, let me restart IE. So now I have my IE set up kind of in a pretty restrictive way. So I'll go to apps.com.
Well, you're gone from the Hangout.
Yeah, I'm trying to share my Internet Explorer, but it's obviously not rendering very well.
Well, your face is gone, that's for sure.
Reload tab, refresh. So I think I might have it so hammered down that apps.com can't even tell what browser it is, so nothing's getting rendered correctly. But let me try to sign in. But I don't even see the sign in. There it is, sign in. Let's see what happens here. Oh, that's why. I was zoomed to a different web yesterday. That's why it was so. But see, I can't even, because I have everything locked down. It won't even bring up the sign-in screen right now. Like it's not, like IE is not allowing that to happen. And so, kind of, because basically they were getting the sign-in screen, correct? But then nothing would happen when they finished typing their credentials, correct?
They weren't getting to the next credentials, and it just hung after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay. So I obviously can't do anything on apps.com. So there is a way to troubleshoot this outside of your app, but if you're using the embedded browser, the only way you can troubleshoot is you have to use IE, right? Because if you go to apps.com or a web app using Chrome, it won't matter because you're not using Chrome's stack, right? You're using IE's browser, and that's the big difference. So now I'm going to go in and do internet options. I'm going to do advanced, and I'm going to do reset. Reset. Close. I'm going to close IE and restart IE. And I'm going to reshare it. All right, so I'm just going to use the recommended settings this time instead of touching things. Apps.com. Yeah, so now I'm getting the sign-in screen. So it is going through the process now, but obviously with the IE settings at extreme one way, it's going to stop customers. And that the problem is nothing unique to you. It's been a problem with embedded IE forever. Like I said, I remember taking the tech support call 15 years ago. People couldn't download the payroll update, and it's because of settings in IE. because ultimately the settings in IE affect the embedded browser stuff inside of QuickBooks,
Mm-hmm.
or in theory, your app.
Yeah. The other thing I see going to be a problem pretty soon is the Authenticated signing, because they're getting rid of the SHA-1 algorithms.
I'm not sure I'm following you on that, Jack.
Well, when you sign an EXE or MSI,
Oh,
the algorithm that's been used up until recently has been what they call SHA-1. I don't know what that really means, but SHA-1. If you look in the certificate, it says SHA-1. Microsoft is phasing that out of Windows at the end of this year.
that's right. I think I remember seeing something about that a
Yeah.
few months back. That's coming.
Yeah. So that's becoming an issue, and I don't know how to do this if they're doing it. I think that a lot of people, security people in the IT, are already turning it off, because I'm seeing a lot of code that we're still using the SHA-1, and our new certificate came in, and we're going to be implementing it this weekend. But it goes there, it's signed, it's properly signed. You look at it, there's no problem here. They get it, and Windows will say, this has an invalid signature on it. Then you got to do the run anyway thing. I'm seeing more and more of those. Yeah, so hopefully when we go to this new SHA-2, with a new certificate this weekend, hopefully that goes away. The certificates with the Authenticated, they're such a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I think this like stuff like that is starting to make more and more of an argument to just 100% cloud run on SaaS. And I have a friend who kind of works in IT, and somebody changed one setting, and he had to go manually update 150 computers. Right? It's like, yeah, the argument of just 100% cloud is very, very strong.
Yeah. Well, I don't like the cloud version, and here's one of the reasons. If we make a change, it affects everybody under the sun. Okay, all our users. If I have a customer that has a problem, I can give him a specific EXE, it might be beta, whatever, and I don't have to give it to anybody else until we know more about it. So I can get that one person running quickly. If I have 100 people on the app and I make a web change, either it's great for everybody, or maybe 90% of them are not going to be able to run, because you have to go through all that testing to make sure that one little change doesn't affect everybody.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you're any code you introduce is rolling out to the entire base. Yep.
Yeah. So with all our products, we come out with new versions probably weekly. It's anytime there's a little change, pop out another one, and we'll send the first few hours beta. Okay, that run there, didn't have any problems. Then we go and okay, let's take it out of beta, put it into release, and then some people will, when they see the update, they'll do it. Some people don't. So that's been working pretty well for us. So how long is this Hangout going to last? Seems that you're getting less and less people.
It's going to go. So it's still going to be an hour every day, but we're starting to get more guests lined up. We're going to start taking more guests that are outside of Intuit, just because I kind of exhausted all the Intuit people pretty quickly. So we're working on just adding more guests, and then we'll try to alternate every other week with open office hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it ebbs and flows. We'll probably start seeing an uptick now that Scaling New Heights is coming soon. People trying to get their app launched, try to get on apps.com. Plus the other things too is I think we're getting better documentation, right? There's better blog posts on a more frequent basis going out. There's just more channels for people to get answers, not just this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to like these. I can vent out on somebody. Nothing personal, maybe.
No, I like the format too. I know I've talked to a developer. It's called BooksGuard, and he apparently was watching. He just watched all the old Intuit Hangouts that were on YouTube, and that's how he learned everything you need to do to build the app. So at some level, it's just another medium, and some people that like video can use this medium.
Mm-hmm. We're doing a project now on QuickBooks Desktop, and I want to get your feedback. What do you think it might be good on online? It's an inventory alert. Basically, if a particular item goes below a certain level, we'll kick out either a pop-up or email, and I guess we could do a text. And it's not based upon, like on the desktop, it's not based upon the quantity on hand. It's based on, say, a percentage of the reorder point.
Okay.
So, and anytime we capture, well, you can do this on the desktop pretty easily. We capture the transactions, like an invoice or item receipt, and we say, okay, let's look at the items on there. What are inventory items? And then we say, hey, there's a CDOT threshold where we have to notify somebody because their ordering didn't work or something. And
yeah, and I think between a notification or automatic creation of a purchase order, right?
Well, maybe a purchase order doesn't help tomorrow. But we display the last purchase order when it was sent and what the expected date is. The same things don't exist in QuickBooks Online yet, but so we display a lot of that information. And I was thinking that putting in links up they can automatically do call up the vendor and things like that might be the next step to it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, like, as we think about kind of moving forward, right, in the Internet of Things, right, and if you want to think like an Apple Watch or something, right, those are the type of things, like, you're probably not going to interact very deeply with QuickBooks through an Apple Watch, right? But if your inventory is about to go out of order, or you have some specific item, or you ordered that inventory, it didn't show up, right? Hey, you've had this open purchase order for 30 days. You may want to call this vendor and find out where it's at. And so I think, like, that monitoring and providing those alerts, yes, absolutely makes sense. Now, the format and how they should be delivered is the interesting part, because some people might want, I want that as a text message. Some people might want it on their iPhone. Some people want it on their watch. Some people want it as a browser pop-up. So, and that's going to be the interesting. The format you deliver those alerts in is kind of the interesting part of it.
I think the next logical thing for that would be is to email or text the vendor. What's my order?
Yeah, that would be an interesting template, right? You get an alert about it, and then it's like, hey, would you like to contact this vendor right now? And you say yes, and it shoots off an email. And then maybe the next day, if they haven't responded, it's like, would you like to call the vendor, right? Almost where you're getting reminded or nagged to follow up on that order.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be my next one.
I think there's, like, the next wave kind of coming is people interacting with QuickBooks, but not using QuickBooks, right? So you could think of that Amazon Echo, that speaker microphone you can get from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's kind of designed for home use, et cetera, but imagine that in a shoe store, and a shoe salesman can just say, Alexis, how many of this shoe model do I have in stock? And do I have any size 5 shoes? And that can read the QuickBooks Online inventory, come back and announce over the speaker, you have 2 pairs left in color red. So you have that. So people are using QuickBooks data but never touching, tasting, smelling QuickBooks, and I think that's I think that's where things are headed. This whole layer of people utilizing QuickBooks data without ever actually seeing it.
When people talk to me and how things work, I keep telling them like we use QuickBooks like a database. We can create transactional all that, but that's what you're talking about too. It's use it as a database. You get vendors in there, you got customers in there, you get all these items in there, and just use them. And it happens to be QuickBooks where you have this great UI in there, can do all kinds of other things too.
Yeah, and I think this is that discussion I've had with accountants, right? Some accountants, they ask, I've never had developers ask, when is QuickBooks Online going to have the same permissions as QuickBooks Desktop? And I am leaning towards you don't want it to. Because the ideal situation is you don't let a small business owner and all their employees touch QuickBooks. Use the accountant touch QuickBooks, and those employees, if they just need to create invoices, you put them on an app to create invoices. If they just need to manage shipments, you put them on an app to do their shipping, and that app talks to QuickBooks. So you're separating who touches QuickBooks. In theory, only the bookkeeper or the accountant. All the employees of a business, in theory, won't.
Yeah, you're cutting down on the number of users you're going to have on QuickBooks a lot.
Well, it kind of makes sense, right? If you really think about it, QuickBooks is your bookkeeping software. Why would you want 20 people's fingers in your bookkeeping software?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. We're doing another project now. We're just wrapping up for a flight school where we call it Easy Order Entry. And it's basically a fancy, simple invoice entry. Guys that are working in the shop, they also do repairs. This happens to be a repair shop for planes. They're working on a plane. They put the class as the plane. They put an ABC. It brings up this is the plane they're working on. Okay, and now they're going to say, okay, you got to add this part and this labor. Bang, they put it in, and maybe it's the end of the day because it takes a long time to work on planes. So they save it, right? We save it as a pending invoice, so it doesn't go into AR or anything. Next day they come in and give me a list of all the pending invoices and select which one I want to work on. And the screen, the UI is simplified, create invoice screen. They don't have to know prices and all this other stuff in there, custom fields and all that stuff. All they need is quantity of wheels. I need 5 wheel size 5. They don't care about price.
So basically you built a UI that keeps the employees out of QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah. I'm constantly trying to tell that to some accountants. I think get it, and other ones don't totally get it yet. Because I think people are used to the old model, right? Which is let all those aircraft mechanics type things into QuickBooks, and that's where you run into big problems. Yeah. Because next thing you know, they're deleting important things out of QuickBooks. They're somehow, they're getting into payroll, or they're going into the check register. They're going into other places you don't want them at. So the best permission model is don't let them touch QuickBooks at all.
Yeah, especially even not just invoices, which they want to do is that they got the price on there. Why should a mechanic care about the price? The wheel is whatever they want to set the wheel for. It wants to be $50, $100, and he wants to put a price of $3,500. That tends to screw things up because he meant to put it in the quantity field or whatever. This $10,000 wheel, it's going for $5.
Yeah. So I just think that's where things are headed. Mm-hmm. Some people, I think there's just some people that are stuck in the old way of doing things, and they think it should always be done that way. But I think the model you're talking about with this aircraft mechanics is a really good model. Like that's the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been doing that for quite a while. We've done hundreds of custom apps over the past 12 years. The one question I keep getting asked is what's happening with QuickBooks on the Mac? Is that going away, or?
Well, I mean, essentially, it's QuickBooks Online is essentially the Mac product. So there's not any new version of QuickBooks for the Mac. There hasn't been in a long time. So you basically could use QuickBooks Online with the desktop client as your Mac solution.
Does QuickBooks on the Mac support IIF files?
The desktop installed one, maybe, because I think that was essentially QuickBooks 6 or QuickBooks 99, so it may support those, but I don't know for sure, Jack.
But even the current QuickBooks, they all have IIF import capability, whether it works or not.
Yeah, it's still in the menu, but we don't officially support it.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
But I had a customer, just picked him up a few days ago, and he was just saying he's so sick of Windows 10. He can't get it to work with his computers, but fighting with different people for 4 months, and he wanted to go with QuickBooks on the Mac and interface with some e-commerce systems, which we can do very well, but not on the Mac.
Yep.
So we explored different options and everything else, and he bought a QuickBooks Online subscription. He bought a QuickBooks Pro 2016 subscription. He bought a little bit of everything, and he can't get anything to work, and he's very fearful of changing something else. Like, he doesn't want to think about converting to QuickBooks Online right now. So I even tried talking about hosting QuickBooks Desktop. Doesn't want to do that either. So he's going to get another PC for just QuickBooks and related stuff, and do Macs for the rest of his business.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, I think if you're taking time to buy a new computer just to run QuickBooks, it's probably that time to think about moving to an online product, right? Because that's a pretty big upfront cost now, right? Like, you're going to be out $600 to host your own QuickBooks file. You're building a new server in the back room or something like that. I think that's really, for a lot of companies, the time to consider, all right, do I really want to build this server, or do I want to migrate, work with an accountant and migrate it and have a server again? Yeah.
Well, that's if you're coming from a position of comfort and strength where you say, okay, now I've done all my homework, let's figure it out. He's coming from, hey, I've been trying everything under the sun for 4 months, and the computers don't work, and Windows 10 don't work. I can't do anything. I'm spending a lot of money. Well, I need a solution. I know it's going to work. I'm desperate. That's what he is.
Yeah.
So he says, I know QuickBooks Windows Desktop. Let me just put it on this. Oh, he's got it on his old machine right now. Still runs. We'll get it to work there. Once he's working there, he's just going to get probably another laptop and keep it, next to his Mac.
Mm-hmm.
So he just doesn't want any change. He wants something he knows is going to work. Because frustration levels are just too high right now.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, you joined us. It's been a while.
Hey, David, how's it going, man?
Not bad.
Yeah, my real reason to join is just confirming desktop IPP for desktop support version 2. That's getting turned off in March, right? March 1st.
The desktop REST API, yes, is being shut down.
Very good. Can't wait.
What is that, 2 days, 3 days from now? Yeah.
March 1st.
Yeah. March 1st.
Yes, March 1st.
I am thrilled. I think we only have, at the beginning of this year, we only had 6 people left that were still using it, and we've been in contact with them, and it's, either switch to online or use our product, and it's not going to go to QuickBooks and export, or use our own accounting, and I just can't wait. Just thrilled.
And that's, it's really interesting because I think ultimately that API in the grand scheme of QuickBooks Desktop, the desktop REST API and the QB Sync Manager was hardly used in the grand scheme, right? It just was really hardly used. And the developers that did try to use it and try to adopt it as well, they just found the support headaches are just very, very high, which kind of makes sense, right? Like, the source of truth being a hard drive on a kitchen table or a laptop is difficult, right, when you're trying to build a cloud or a REST API type scenario. And so I think a lot of developers are kind of happy with it, but it's tricky because the customers are the ones that kind of have to, okay, what's next, right? you have different options, right, on how you want to handle those. But there's a lot, I think, but a lot of the developers, once they've, especially developers that are using online, and they have their support costs are lower with their online customers. The onboarding experience is easier with the online customers. Overall, they really just want their customers to move to QuickBooks Online, especially if you're SaaS already.
Right. So, yeah, that's good news. And you're right. I think the support is by far the hardest one. Not only having to try to contact Intuit support, but our own support department. Just so much easier with QuickBooks Online. You get instant feedback if there's a problem. I know the problem. I don't have to put something up there and wait for it to be in a pending state and then get a sync error and then try to dig out, oh, it's the sync error, not, it's so. And our code base will reduce by more than half for that. So that's great. Yeah, and then I saw you brought me into a conversation with some colleagues, and I think we got him. I think you finally got him pointed down the right path about, if you want SDK support, right? Not exact on or QuickBooks Online support. Here's the page to go to. But I guess from the person's original question, is there a equivalent of you, David, for desktop?
No. I mean, this is pretty much, here's QuickBooks Desktop, what I sent them.
Right. I figured that was the case, and I'll have them just
But I also feel like they are confused about their integration level, because I think they're like the whole QuickBooks payroll, and that's where I was saying, they probably don't have an integration to QuickBooks payroll. They probably have an integration to sending time data to QuickBooks Desktop, and then Intuit Payroll. QuickBooks payroll is just using that. Yeah. So it's just a little bit of confusion on their side. I just found it interesting that I kind of looped you in, because I would argue maybe you might be the expert on QuickBooks and the Intuit relationship on your side, and they cut you out of the conversation again. I know Exact is a huge company that has done many acquisitions, et cetera, but I was like, Dave's the best guy on your side of the fence and knows what to do.
Yeah, and they're also working with Joe Dwyer. It's like he's the best in the country about this type of stuff. So.
Yeah, but it seems kind of ironic that you work for Exact, you have this deep level of knowledge, and then they kind of
yeah, and they're right across the hall too.
Oh, you guys, it's both same location. Interesting.
Yeah, but
so what is that product then?
Well, that's JobBoss, right? That's the product that I actually grew up in, right? And it's the on-premise, very deep manufacturing solution that's integrated to QuickBooks Desktop for eons. And we've taken 3 or 4 different attempts up to charge the hill and make the integration better. And we finally hired Joe, and Joe really helped us get it solid. And so I'm not sure, they must be doing some updates or something to their product, which I don't keep track of anymore. And they also have some new people in product management as well, and they're just trying to find some feelers. So, and by the time I got to reading the email, there was already 3 or 4 strings after it, and you gave them the right answer. So.
Got it. And then I think also if they're working with Joe, they're going to be fine, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's that also, that piece of it. So just so JobBoss is your desktop manufacturing software, but then you have the Exact Inventory and the Exact Manufacturing SaaS-based products.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that we snapped into a previous SaaS product, right, that started in Europe, and it was very accounting-centric, and over years they've been adding the industry solutions, the inventory management and the manufacturing and the professional services, etc. So.
Got it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny part. I think I was involved with that. With the question with the payroll. we did the check export originally to QuickBooks Desktop eons ago, and we used time and created checks. And that was about it.
Got it.
So, good. So are you someplace now? Is there a hackathon going on that you are attending right
Not,
now?
well, there is, but
Hmm.
not this weekend for me.
Okay.
So I'm in Tucson, but there's the launch
Right.
hackathon, which is Jason Calacanis' thing, and so that's
Yeah.
a pretty big event. That's happening. I think it starts this afternoon and goes through Sunday, and then they also have the launch. So that's the hackathon. Then I think they also have the rest of the conferences the next 3 or 4 days. That's happening this week. But the previous week before that, or 2 weeks ago, was we did Tree Hacks, which is the
Hmm.
Stanford hackathon, and we
Hmm.
did the Developer Week hackathon, both the same day in the Bay Area. And then 2 weeks before that was the Hack Arizona here in Tucson. So we've been, very, very busy with some of the hackathons that have been happening. Um, and now the hackathons are kind of slowing down. Now it's kind of getting into the accounting shows, right?
Right.
Starting to plan for all the big conferences. The accounting conferences now are starting to really ramp up and a lot of planning. And then not only that, we're starting to get into that QuickBooks Connect planning, right? Like, what does QuickBooks Connect this year look like?
Hmm.
You know, for um,
Do
for
these
developers.
hackathons like actually? I know they probably announced the winners, but is there a list of all the presentations about just kind of where people are thinking?
So ours, when we do the ours at QuickBooks Connect, we have a professional video crew who records all the presentations,
Hmm.
and then we put those videos up on YouTube. So those are out there. Um, but these other smaller hackathons, these ones that are like at the college campuses, there's
Hmm.
really not a lot of that happening where they videotape kind of what they're doing.
Gotcha.
Um,
I'd be interested in just seeing what people are doing with location services, whether it's a wearable or using your phone, or et cetera. I know there's a lot of that going on, and I've got my own little spin about what I want to do. So I'd be interested in just seeing what they're mashing together.
I've seen a lot, like at some of these college hackathons, they definitely are big on playing with hardware,
Hmm.
like Adruno and wearables, and then drones. People are going crazy with drones right now. I think that's kind of the hot stuff with like kind of the college scene.
Hmm.
And things, there's a wearable that kind of goes in the forearm, and these guys built this in a weekend. They built a nice UI also. So if you're going to the gym and you have to do reps, so instead of counting your reps, it's called a myo band, and
Hmm.
it'll count your reps. And
Hmm.
but then they built it so you could, I think it senses muscle fluctuations, so you could actually like, oh, and I'm going to jump rope, so I wiggle one finger, and that means switch the app to jump rope, and then I
Hmm.
do my jump roping, and it counts my jump roping, and now I'm going to do box jumps, and I can change to that, or I'm going to do arm curls, and I can navigate and switch the app on my iPhone all through this band and never actually touch my phone. Which is, so you're seeing kind of things heading that way. And then I think specifically to us in the QuickBooks side, and I was just talking to Jack about this before you came on. I think that this whole level between QuickBooks and the end users is being separated, and it's going to be hardware. A lot of it's going to be hardware. So if you think like an Amazon Echo, right?
Hmm.
Put that in a shoe store, and now the sales guy doesn't have to go to the back room to see if they have any size 5 of red shoe X, right? He can just say, Alexis, do I have any size 5 of this shoe? And Amazon's Alexis or Echo, that device, could use the Amazon API to talk to the QuickBooks Online API and come back and say, you have 2 pairs in stock, right? Something like that. So I think that's an easy story to tell, an example. But there's devices like bars can put on all the alcohol bottles that measures the alcohol, and it's all radio frequency tied to the Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
And so if a bottle of alcohol is almost out, it can automatically create a purchase order. Now imagine that, creating a purchase order in QuickBooks automatically, or there's scales that go underneath kegs, right? So the devices themselves are getting so cheap, you're going to see more and more things interacting with QuickBooks in ways that right now, like, people aren't even imagining. So what we're thinking, what I would like us, I'm kind of feeling this out with developers now. I think that would be a good. Our previous 2 hackathons at QuickBooks Connect have been, hey, here's QuickBooks API, build something to get onto apps.com. And I think what we want to do this year is maybe have our hackathon be a little bit more, here's a bunch of awesome technology we gathered up. on a table,
Mm-hmm.
build something cool. Now, whether or not it makes it to market, who knows? Really just get people excited about playing with new technologies and how to take those new technologies and interact with QuickBooks or solve small business problems beyond
Yeah.
just the API, right?
Yeah, I came in at the end of that with the separation of duties and separating the duties into an app. That's about when I joined, and totally agree. Um, but yeah, so those location services and the Internet of Things and the in my case, I'm really interested in the micro location of services, or micro location services, I should say. It's good enough to know I'm on a street, right? I don't think that's terribly hard to do, to figure out what street I'm at based on my phone or
Yeah.
something, right? And everyone's doing that. Not that I've actually done it, but I think it's pretty straightforward. But where is something in the bar?
Yep.
That's the
Full inventory. Yeah, I
right.
see that. That's full inventory. That could be interesting, especially like if you're in a big warehouse, right?
Yeah, right.
And instead of you looking down, you could keep walking, and maybe your phone is just gives you a little vibration. Turn left, turn right.
Yeah, exactly. That augmented reality type of thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Google Glass or you're viewing your shop through your iPad as you're walking through the shop, and it's little beacons are saying, oh yeah, there's that's this part and that's this part, and etc. So, and I've been reading a lot about the BLE, the Bluetooth low emission or something,
Okay.
that supposedly the batteries last in these devices pretty well because they don't do much, right? One little coin thing can last for 3 months, 4 months or something.
Okay.
And so to kind of tap into that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. And then I've seen people like some of the things that, so even internally at Intuit, we're experimenting with these things, and I've seen where we have helped like an ice cream shop put sensors in their freezers so it can just text them or let them know the temperature of the freezer. Because what happens is sometimes the employees will go home at night, turn off the wrong light switch, they turn off the freezers, they lose $4,000 in ice cream.
Right.
But the hardware to do that now is like $75.
Right.
Right. Like it's kind of insane, like how that's coming along, and so that's what we want to do is kind of create more of a real hackathon around that type of stuff, to where engineers like yourself who want to experiment with this can really experiment it with no pressure of like, oh, I'm gonna have to do a demo or a pitch to VCs when I'm done, or any of that type of stuff. Really, just
Are you going to
what's
provide the
cool that we can
hardware?
make and show. I would like to, yeah.
That would be awesome.
And then maybe we make a wish list, like what hardware do you want to see there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And have a big table of hardware and get, people like Amazon and these other companies to donate this hardware and their APIs, and maybe bring in their API experts. So yes, it'll be a hackathon related to small business and QuickBooks, but all this other stuff could be there. And so that's kind of where we're thinking. It's still early, but I'm trying to feel that out as a response, because I know you haven't came to the hackathon at QuickBooks Connect, right?
Correct.
Before. So if this was available, if I had hardware like this available, would you come?
Yeah, I think I'd bring a whole team of people, right? I mean,
Okay.
I'd bring a couple developers, a UXer, maybe even someone a little bit more on the marketing side than me, and I think that'd be really fun to do that type of stuff. And but it'd be a great idea to have those devices there, and at least a manual, even though who likes to read a manual? Give me a code sample or something to take advantage of the device, and that'd be great.
All right. So maybe that's something going in as we think about this. Like when we start pulling in hardware and bring it in, instead of us just ordering hardware randomly, like we probably want to do some vetting of the hardware, or at least to the companies, and be like, hey, can you send a representative? Can you provide support that weekend or whatever,
Right. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. You get, in the Scrum world, you swarm around projects, and you have the QE person and the SE person and the designer like myself, and we're always swarming around a problem or a new thing we're adding, and you get a lot done. So if the hackathon became a swarm amongst different experts, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
and how, can we rent one of those persons, or what I mean, check that person out who's that device uh, expert. Can you check them out to a team? If there's 24 hours in a day, every team can check them out for 20 minutes at a time or something.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like there might be, if we have 200 developers or 300 developers, and not all those developers or all those teams are going to work on X piece of hardware.
Right.
Right. So in theory, that if we can get that company to come out and support that piece of hardware, there should be enough support there and bandwidth to handle that. But yeah, I think that would be one of the things if we go in and I'm going to bring in some piece of hardware, right? I'm going to get a commitment that, hey, you're here for the whole entire Hangout, right?
Right.
Yes, you can leave to go to sleep, but you're there for 12 hours a day to support help for all these devs. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. That'd be really fun. And yeah, I saw that thing last week that Jason, whoever, the guy that's hosting that today. Yeah, that was really pretty exciting to listen to him and the hackathons and everything that he kind of experienced in his upbringing to where he is. And I've never been there to a hackathon or something. I think that'd be pretty cool just to kind of get some ideas, especially with the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And having Jason on last week was amazing. Definitely. It was a huge deal, and I'm glad he took the time to do this.
Yeah, very cool. So, anything else from your end? Again, my two things were solved with. We are really dropping desktop in 10 days. That's a great thing.
Yeah,
for me.
And it's just that API. I mean, people could go.
I should. Desktop, that's a good point. We had somebody that came back and said, I think our support person or whoever was talking to our customers that are still using desktop, they said it closer to how I said it, which is incorrect. That, QuickBooks is dropping desktop. No, that's not it at all. It's just through the REST calls. You have to talk to QuickBooks desktop in a different way. And you're right. I should say that a little differently.
Yeah, and it's done, through for everybody that's still watching. I mean, it's done at a deeper way. So the old QuickBooks Desktop SDK, is 15 years of SDK code stacked up, and you can get to all. We tried to build some super REST API, and no matter how hard we worked on it, after 4 years we only had this much, and it was going to be another 15 before it was as deep as the old SDK. So it's kind of this decision, because a lot of developers are like, why would I switch if I can just use the old SDK? And that's some of it caused the adoption problems.
Right.
So yes, it's kind of possibly painful a little bit, because I think there's going to be some developers and some customers, no matter how much blogging we did about it, talking about it publicly on the Hangouts for 1.5 years, 2 years, that are going to be surprised by it next Tuesday.
Right.
And that's going to be a little bit of a pain, and that's something I think that's always going to happen. No matter how much reach out you do to a company, somebody's not going to know it's happening. So we're kind of prepared to handle that and be ready for that.
If I look at my app card, I think technically I would still see, maybe I haven't been in there for a while, but it will be not only turned off, but when I try to connect to that app, the desktop option will be gone, right?
Yeah, so it'll be gone as an option. Whether or not you can still see a report on it through the dev site, that I'm not positive on. Unfortunately, somebody else on the team was really handling the desktop shutdown, and I'm actually was really heavily involved in the QuickBooks V2 API shutdown for QuickBooks Online.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So we're moving over to the V3. Yes.
Yeah, I just saw that, which was put out 8 weeks ago or something, and I just noticed it the other day, and I think we're good.
and when we started shutting that down
a while ago,
almost 2 years ago, because the V2 QuickBooks Online API only supported the US.
Right. Yep.
And then once QuickBooks Online went global, you have to use the V3 to connect globally. And so it just, at this point, if a developer builds on V2 and then decides to go global, they have to migrate. So we really have to get the V2 off the table so nobody uses it anymore.
Right. There might have been one thing on V2 in setting up invoices, which, that's the big piece for us, sending invoices and journal entries. And I haven't looked at it for a while. We haven't done too much development with, it's been working well enough for us. But it seems to me like we went from V2 to V3. There was one thing about being able to override the revenue account on the item that I was sending over, right?
Okay.
And do you know, have you ever heard anyone, is that available in V3? I think I submitted a request on it and they said, I don't know if we're going to do that in V3.
I'm not 100% specific about that issue, but my understanding has been that the V3 API is equally as deep as the V2. If not, actually, now it's more because there's a reports API, et cetera, et cetera. Now, specifically that one issue that I'm not totally positive on. The nice thing about the V3 API, the V2 with QuickBooks Online, is you can just slowly swap out one endpoint at a time. The customers don't know the difference, and then eventually you're just migrated over to V3. You don't have to do it all in one weekend or a huge change or a huge migration. You just stop calling the customer endpoint with V2 and use the V3 endpoint instead, and you swap. So you can really do it in small chunks, very, very controlled migration.
Right. Yeah, I think we took care of it about a year ago and just started using V3, and we like V3 a lot better. The other thing that has been a real problem for us, we might be able to solve it now that desktop's no longer in play, or in a week we'll be able to solve it. That has been, if I have an assembly item in QuickBooks or an inventory item in QuickBooks, right? That's how it's defined in QuickBooks, right? And it's kind of a one-way street. Once you define that item as an inventory item, it's always an inventory item, right?
Yes, it's never been the other way.
Yep. So when you specify it, you give it a sales account, and you give it an inventory account, and I believe you give it a cost account as well.
Yep.
And so when I invoice that item, QuickBooks nicely makes two sets of journal entries for me, right? The revenue is booked, the accounts receivable is booked on the cash coming inside, and then the cost as inventory is reduced, right? Inventory goes down, cost of goods sold goes up. And so with both of those journal entries, you get a nice profit margin, right? That's not a terrible thing at all, right?
Yeah.
That's good. But for me, when I deliver the product, right? I'm making something and I deliver it. That's when we book cost of goods sold and inventory, right? And we do that into QuickBooks at our own prices, because and so again, I deliver it. I make the journal entry for cost of goods sold and inventory as I deliver it, and usually it's invoiced within 10 or 15 minutes. And now I send it over to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks doubles that second journal entry for me, right? Is that how you're tracking with me? QuickBooks makes both the revenue and the cost journal entry on those types of items on the invoice. I've already made the cost journal entry when I delivered the product. So to try to handle that has been difficult for us, and we came up with terrible workarounds, and it still confuses people.
Because you want to temporarily track the cost.
Well, again, it's kind of like what you were saying before. We have taken all of our manufacturing users out of QuickBooks, right? They do all of their stuff in my own application, and we just send things over to QuickBooks. And one of the things we send over is journal entries, and they don't even know it, right? They just deliver the product to the customer, and we say inventory went down, cost of goods sold went up, right? And it's my costs. I've got all that cost in my product. So it could be average costing. It might be a standard cost, but average is even better, right? I've got a better cost of my product than QuickBooks does.
Yeah. So are you like keeping the inventory in QuickBooks in sync?
No, we're kind of ignoring the QuickBooks inventory and saying we've got inventory. We can manage all that, and we can make the journal entries that affect inventory, right? Because that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, exactly.
And our stock counts, how many I have on hand. We're not managing the inventory in QuickBooks, so it's really hard to keep that synchronized.
So you're okay. So you're just you're doing journal entries just to adjust inventory quantity, your inventory value, and your cost of goods sold value. But then what's happening is when you're shoving an invoice in, you're kind of hitting that.
It's getting doubled up. Now QuickBooks says, "Oh, it's an inventory item. I not only want to do the sales side. I need to do the inventory side, or it's a assembly item, right? I need to do that, and so now it gets doubled up or close to double, right?"
So that's I guess was my question. So when you send that invoice in, you probably don't want to use inventory items on the invoice in QuickBooks.
That's exactly what we've done. We've put in a replacement item, and it's kind of a bit of a nightmare. We say, "Oh, use this item," which I'm sure is not an inventory item in QuickBooks, and then it's just going to book the revenue and the accounts receivable.
Exactly, because if your app's the one tracking the inventory, you really in QuickBooks you should turn inventory off.
Right, but I don't have any control.
Unless you're keeping it 100%. Yeah, unless you're keeping it 100% sync. Yeah. Now
I can't turn it off.
You kind of do. You can read the API, and you can tell if it's on or off.
Yeah, you're right. I can. But if a customer turns it on an item, they can't turn that item away from inventory. It's always inventory.
That's correct. It's on. Once it's on, it's on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they say, "Well, I don't want to create a different item for it, right? So can you just manage it for me?" So it's been rough. But my final pitch is this: I'm pretty sure in the version 3 API, when I create that invoice, it will come back with me, "Oh, great, I created that invoice for you," and it will also give me a linked journal entry that it made, right? In addition to the sales side, right? I believe it comes. Yeah,
it's not really a link. It is just a transaction. It's not putting a second transaction in. But if you do, I think it's the same in QuickBooks Online too. If you do a Control Y when you're on that transaction, you can view the journal entry.
Okay.
What's happening under the covers.
Gotcha. But and that didn't happen with the desktop API. Right? That only happened with version 3 online API. So once we go to that exclusively, then I might even be able to reverse that half of the journal entry manually, because I've already taken care of the half I really care about.
Yeah, like you're going to have to pass it through a wash.
Yeah.
Right. Or the inventory item itself in QuickBooks, since you're handling the journal entry, you might be able to just on the inventory item itself put the COGS account and the income account to the same account.
That's a great idea, actually. I'm a little afraid of doing that to their data in QuickBooks Online, but that's a pretty good idea. Just wash them through the same account, and then it's a zero-sum game.
Since you're accounting for the accurate numbers in your journal entries.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good way of approaching it. Instead of just saying, "Well, whatever they have, leave it well enough alone. I'll just reverse it." And you'll probably be happy about that too. Just fewer journal entries.
That or the other option is you do like an inventory adjustment.
Right.
That's another one. So yeah, I think that's something you kind of have to feel out. Because this is something that's probably going to be, people that have their inventory in a point of sale system, as more people have their inventory separately, is like, what's the best practices for these? And we're starting to see this now, right? Now that there's a lot of apps and people are coming up with across these same use cases, gathering these and what's the best practice and getting these shared across developers is definitely something that's going to have to start happening more often.
Right. Sure. And again, because of that, right, and I've got a replacement item that I'm dealing with right now, some just generic item that I know is not an inventory item. We would love to be able to say, well, specify my own revenue account, right? It might be a different revenue account than that generic item's revenue account. So that's where this whole conversation started. It would be nice to override that and say, hey, use this revenue account off of the real inventory item, right? Use that on my replacement item as I invoice that in QuickBooks. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
With that. And again, I'm pretty sure version 2 allowed me to do that. And version 3, when we took advantage of it and made our changes, did not. So
maybe look at the new API and just see, because there has been a lot of changes.
Right.
In the last year and a half on the V3 API. So maybe take a look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in there and done it.
And then on top of that, there's been inventory changes in QuickBooks Online and the API. Make it even more complicated.
What about webhooks?
Cool.
Well, I got you if I'm the only one on here. Is there any move for you guys to support webhooks? I saw that look on your face.
Yeah, I don't know what the statuses of webhooks are right now. I know that it's one of those things that you see sometimes in a meeting, it's being worked on. Is it ever going to get done? Is it ever going to make it out the door? I think there's always those competing priorities. Now, ideally, this goes back to that QuickBooks hackathon type of situation at QuickBooks Connect. I would love for even us to have our unfinished APIs available to developers, right? Just to play with, like, hey, because my theory is if we could get, maybe webhooks is 80% done. I don't know, let's just say. But if I could bring webhooks to developers and they can, just at the hackathon only, play with them, now I can say, look at all the cool stuff people could do if we had webhooks.
Right.
If we had a payroll API, if we had an activities feed API, right? So there's things that I think people have started, but they never get enough resources to finish. And it'd be cool to like let developers play with some of this unfinished stuff.
Right, or at least in the sandbox, let us play around. I mean,
yeah, get it to that level. Yeah.
Right. We don't have to make it totally available yet, but so.
I think a lot of it is priorities and resources.
Sure.
And that's what the important parts of us shutting some of this stuff down, right? Like supporting the desktop REST API is probably preventing webhooks from coming indirectly from a resource standpoint.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I just took a quick look at the version 3 sales item line details, which I suspect is where the item that I'm invoicing on the line, I would find the sales reference GL account, and I'm not seeing it. So maybe I'll just submit it again, and maybe I'll be more clear this time that it'd be a really nice override. Even though I'm saying I'm invoicing this item, here's the unit price, here's the cost. Instead of going to the item sales account, let me override it to another QuickBooks sales account or revenue account.
Yeah.
I think that'd be some nice stuff. So anyway, we'll see what happens. So, all right. Well, I think that's it on my end, unless you got any other cool things to report.
No, I mean, you kind of shut this down here this week, and we'll see how it goes on Tuesday. So
yeah. Yeah, hopefully it's just done.
Yes. It's
right.
good to know that there's some developers that are totally for it. Awesome. All right, Dave, thanks for calling in.
Yeah, nice talking to you. We'll see you, man.
Right, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.